everybody, and welcome to this first episode of Season 2 of the Closers Podcast. I am your host, as always, Marco Alvarado, and I am joined by my co-host, Quinn the Moondog Kalani. We have a pretty great episode lined up for you. We're going to talk to my dad, known pretty hilariously as Ruben, the Kitties Titties, Alvarado. We're going to talk to him about his upbringing in the early 70s, late 60s, and how things kind of are parallel to the times that we're living in right now. And then, we're going to delve into a little bit of Chicano culture and Hawaiian culture and the parallels between those two and the contrasts, and then we kind of circle back around to the 1960s and the 70s again. It's a pretty great conversation. I love talking to my dad, and having Quinn there just is icing on the cake. So I hope you enjoy this convo. Afterwards, we will have our weekly recommendations. Quinn and I will. So anyways, without further ado, here is the interview with my dad. All right, so here we have my dad, Ruben, the Kitties Titties, Alvarado, the man himself, the moniker coined by the Moondog Quinn Kalani himself, the first meeting of the two, the immovable object and the unstoppable force. How are you feeling, Papa? How are you doing, Dad?
I'm feeling fine. How are you guys doing?
I'm pretty good, I think. What about you, Quinn?
Pretty solid. Hanging in there. Hanging tough, all things considered.
You hanging 10?
Yeah. Well played. Yes.
So, Baba, we wanted to have you on here for a multitude of reasons. You and Quinn have never talked really or had an extensive conversation. So that's, for one, the fans are excited about that. Two, you are older than me and Quinn by I know, right? That's a surprise. But by a substantial number of years.
That's not crazy. I mean, it's all relative.
Well, okay, but you've lived through decades that me and Quinn have not, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so with that being said, the current climate of like America right now, would you say is reminiscent of the time where you grew up, which was the 1970s, or is that kind of like, do you not see any parallels between those two eras?
Oh, definitely a parallel. I don't think it's still not to the point of what the 60s and the late 60s and 70s were, early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, let's just say from 67-ish to 73, it was pretty bad. I mean, I was a kid. I just really didn't understand what was going on. I just knew that people were very angry.
Right.
A lot of protests, a lot of shady things going on. People getting shot, people getting assassinated.
Yeah.
It was, and they had a war. The Vietnam War didn't really end till 1973.
Right.
So, it's kind of like now, and everybody at that time, by the 70s, everybody kind of had we're ignoring the war, like they thought it was over. And like now with Afghanistan, there's still a war going on, but nobody's
talking about it.
So it must not be happening, but
right.
But it is, and when are we getting out? Who knows, and it's the same thing, but people, this is a taste of it. People were very angry. It was a time of change, and anytime there's change, there's pain and there's anger and there's people don't want to change. And this is what's happening now. But people are more open. Back in those days, the establishment, was that it didn't want to change, and it was an established thing, and
Yeah.
I think it was a little harder. You're getting a taste of it right now,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely not what it was when I remember. Again, I was a kid, so I had limited capacity to understand what the hell was going on.
Yeah. But I mean, for the most part, you were within, like, you knew though, even though maybe your perspective was a little warped because you were younger at the time. But I mean, what do you remember, like, specifically? What were, at least from the community that you were in, you were participating within at the time? What was the sentiment that you remember? Was it generally, because you grew up in the Bay Area, so was it generally a more pro-war sentiment that you remember, or was it a more anti-war?
Oh, definitely anti-war, anti-United States, anti-everything, because as you figure with all that was going on with the Nixon administration at that time, and then the war, and
Yeah.
the amount of minorities fighting a war that they didn't even understand why they were even doing it, and
Mm-hmm.
there was just a lot of a lot of anger, and people were pissed, and rightly so. It was a rough time. I mean, I remember people being angry, people being mean to each other a lot more than now.
Yeah.
People were just,
Even more than now?
oh yeah, and it was more accepted back then. And now there's social media. Back then, that people would say and do stuff to each other, and nobody knew what happened. It's not like things were great back in those days. Everybody thinks that everything was great and everybody was happy, and no, it was
Yeah, you guys had Motown.
You
guys had funk. How could anything be bad?
what?
You guys had Motown. You guys had funk.
Yeah.
How could anything be bad?
Yeah, well,
James Brown was still alive.
Brown. Well, that's why that when the pain comes beauty, and that's what happens. The music was hard, and so were the people, but it was nasty,
And the times were harder.
Yeah, it was. It's a nasty. I mean, if you think about it, people were just, just were meaner to each other. I mean, at least for me as a kid, everybody was kind of, mean, and everybody, had their opinions of each other, and you never seen kids walking around with a USA shirt on, or like a USA flag or anything patriotic. Yeah, nobody was into that at all, because you figure the especially with the Nixon scandal and all that,
Watergate, and then Iran Contra. Yeah.
That was later. That was Iran Contra was in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
Around Carter and stuff.
This is a Watergate, where the Nixon administration paid guys to break into the Democratic headquarters in the Watergate Hotel, and then Nixon basically lied and thrown everybody under the bus trying to save himself, and finally he just quit when they knew they had him, dead to rights. He just quit.
That's such a crazy thing to think about now. Like, obviously we have Trump, he did get impeached, but like, to think of like a president that 100% was going to get removed, along with everything else that was happening at the time, that's pretty crazy to think about. And I think people don't realize, at least people from like my generation, our generation, me and Quinn's, like, people get caught up in the idea that like we're the first generation that's gone through this much turmoil in such a short time. But really, there was a lot that happened in the late 60s, early 70s in that short, like, 7-year span,
Well, Martin Luther King gets shot, Robert Kennedy gets shot, John Kennedy, he's the first one to get shot.
Yeah.
Malcolm X gets shot. I mean,
yeah, everyone's getting shot. Everyone that's like trying to move things forward gets shot.
And there's and then Nixon's out there trying to just keep power, so he's going to have the Democratic headquarters bugged.
Mm-hmm.
You can know what's going on, so he can possibly win the win the election, which he does win.
Yeah.
But then he denies everything, and he tries to blame other people, and then everybody starts ratting him out, and then finally he leaves, and after that, people are like, with the government, they were like just kind of disgusted with it,
Yeah.
And then what happens too is he brings Gerald Ford in. He has his which is his vice president. He makes him president.
Right.
First thing Gerald Ford does is pardon Nixon, and off he goes to Yorba Linda, California, and he's
just retires. Just
retires.
He's like Thanos on the planet at the end of Endgame. He's just picking berries for the rest of his life.
That's what and there's still people, I'm sure, today that think Nixon was a great president. It's like the best. I had a teacher back in the early 80s who said Nixon was the best president ever. That time, I was like, you kidding? Yeah, it was just I remember as a kid, everybody being angry and turning on the TV all the time, and there's protests.
Mm-hmm.
There's
yeah.
You see the numbers from the Vietnam War. People, how many people got killed today, in Vietnam. And
yeah. Do you think, because there is definitely a conservative groundswell within the Latino and like Chicano community that you are definitely aware of? And I was curious, where do you think that comes from?
It's because if the conservative or the Republicans weren't so anti-Hispanic, even though they say they're not, but we like you if you're Hispanic, if you're like us, if you become like us, but if you're anything else other than us, we don't want you. You're bad. But the Republican Party, if it would embrace the Latin or at least the Mexican community, you share a lot of the same values of family, work ethic,
like meritocracy.
What's that?
Like meritocracy.
Yeah. They share a lot of the same values that the Republicans espouse, it's all about family and and all about, and working hard and earning your keep and all that stuff, that's that. But since they're so anti, immigrant and anti, basically everything that the Hispanics are, they're anti that, like the language, the religion's not quite right, but everything else is, it's just, I don't know if it's racial, but most likely it is, who knows, but they would get a lot more Hispanic, but people, but there are a lot of Hispanics that,
that are Republicans.
They identify with that. So
Why do you think there's a large number of Hispanics who do identify with, the conservative values more so? Do you think it stems from the Mexican culture? Is it because of like upbringing, or is it a combination of everything?
It's it's upbringing. I mean, it's just, that's how they believe, hard work. Everything's all about working hard, earning your, your keep, that's a big deal with Hispanic people. It's all about working hard. And that's how they prove that, if you're the hardest worker, or you're the guy that can really get after it.
Yeah.
It means a lot to them. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And, raising your family and doing what's best for your family. That's
Yeah.
everything, to them. That's why a lot of people that, especially second generation, third generation, that have been here for a while, and basically they're Americans. They become Americanized, and
Yeah.
they still hold on to those values. Well,
Yeah.
the obvious choice is the Republican Party, because it makes sense what they say.
Yeah. To a degree, yeah.
Makes sense to them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like, it's, to them, it's all about working. If you're not working, then there's something wrong with you. If you're lazy, or
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah. Quinn, do you see that within the Hawaiian culture as well, to a degree, or is it very much kind of in the other direction?
Well, I mean, I think hard work is a teneted value amongst a broad spectrum
Yeah,
of
definitely.
minorities. In Hawaii, though, hard work is valued, but it takes place behind. I'm not sure how to say it, but in Hawaii specifically, there's a go with the flow. It is what it is. Don't stress. Don't aggravate yourself. Don't overcommit to things that are outside of your control.
Mm-hmm. Kind of take it easy.
Yeah. So I mean, and geographically speaking, Hawaii is, it's where East meets the West, and so there's a lot of Eastern philosophy that breeds over into Hawaii, mixed within a lot of American philosophy.
I see.
Hard work is obviously valued, especially amongst Hawaiians, who are the poorest demographic within Hawaii.
Yeah.
But beyond that, Hawaiians are not willing to sacrifice their time, their personal freedom, and their personal happiness for work.
I see.
In the sense that, you're working for someone else. You're not really working for yourself. I guess that's kind of the sense I get.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I feel like in at least Mexican culture, I can't really speak for like any other countries, but it's definitely like you're sacrificing a part of yourself for the work, and that's just commonplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like a resentment in Hawaii. Like, why we're not going to commit this time to you people.
I see.
Almost kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In Mexican culture, it's all about committing time to, it's all about just putting food on the table, and they're not even thinking about, their time or any of that. Is just pretty basic. You know what I mean? Which is kind of sad, because they're basically, their whole lives are just devoted to working, and they don't have any thought into it.
Either that or the family. Because it's like we always have, like, you always have to consider work and the family. That's put above the individual a lot of the times, at least from what I've seen within like hardcore Mexican households.
Yeah, it's definitely a family first, and and work and whatever. You just kind of go with whatever the boss says, or whatever they want is how it's going to be. So
yeah, it's really interesting.
I noticed that Hawaiian people were pretty laid back, and I really never met a Hawaiian person that I didn't like. That were just, they have a coolness about them, and just I don't know. It's just nothing phases them. They're always smiling all the time, and and
at least on the outside, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
yeah. Well, then they're great fakers. Then,
well, I think if one person were to associate a trait with Hawaiian people, it's the resilient positivity within the face of oppression, I guess.
I see. That's interesting. That's something that's really, seldom talked about.
Yeah, well, having a smile on your face is important for many reasons in Hawaii. One, it's a good aloha, it's good vibes. It's putting that out there. And then from an economic standpoint, it pays the people of Hawaii to have a smile on their face as well. So
for like what, like touristic reasons?
yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
that's interesting.
Jamaicans, right? They're notoriously
Really?
angry. Well, you didn't. There's a, I don't know if it's a story of, a bunch of stories of, Jamaicans being very, very mean to the tourists. But they even had to do I remember in the early 2000s they had to do an ad campaign, where they had this one Jamaican guy kind of forcing a smile and dancing around like, "Hey, we're happy,"
Jesus
Christ. He got this like hat on,
Oh my God.
It was,
that's
we're drinking crazy. Red Stripe.
I know, yeah.
And he's dancing around. He says, "So, we're happy now. Come and see us now." And he's just kind of there, like, you could tell he's really.
Yeah.
As soon as he got off set, he took his money, went home.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that fucked up though? That like these, even in other cultures, the minority groups, or like just the indigenous cultures, or the indigenous people of that specific country or area, they have to fake happiness in order to get money from Americans or like American interests,
or whoever's controlling.
Yeah, right. Or whoever's controlling. Isn't that fucked up? I feel like that's pretty fucked.
I feel like that's it's systemic of all minorities.
Yeah.
Is either, it's a some sort of, I don't know if facade is the right word, but there's a front or like a wall, that's put up to please the dominant class.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Going back to tying into that, Quinn, but pivoting to my dad, did you see that? Was that mentality kind of seen when you were growing up too in the Bay Area, where like when you were around a certain, the white, like a predominantly white group of people, you had to put on that face, or you had to change in any way?
Smile and dance around.
Yeah, with a sombrero on or something.
Sombrero on, and fall asleep in front of everybody. No, there was a definitely everybody had their place,
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, my parents telling me, that you shouldn't go into those people's houses. They don't want you there. You don't want, they don't want you in their house. They're just being nice. You don't want, no Mexican kids in their house, or they don't want, and I even had some parents, kids tell me that their parents didn't want me in their house because they don't want no Mexican kids in their house.
Wow.
The other kids can come in, but you can't. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, and you're a little kid, how do you process, how do you sense of that? But growing up, I had a lot of kids that were, I play running and doing sports and everything. You're around a lot of different kids. Where I grew up, there was a lot of Mexican kids and a lot of white kids.
Right.
And, you had friends with both, but it's always who you hung out with afterwards, like whoever you felt more comfortable with. And, I had my friends at school, the guys I ran, went and we across country or whatever sport we'd be friends at school, but outside of school, we never hung out because, weren't comfortable with having me around, or I was, and we even if we would, it was always that tension, like, or at least for me, it was always, you're waiting for somebody to say something stupid or something.
Yeah.
Because it was always, that was always just behind the scenes. And that's why I can sympathize with right now with Black people, and they have to be on guard all the time because they don't know what's coming next. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that even existed at the time too.
Oh,
probably. Yeah.
And so you'd be there hanging out with your friends, having a good time, and then somebody would say something really, really racist or really stupid, or they just start. It just kind of like would just kind of evolve, and next thing you know, it's, if you didn't say anything, it would just keep escalating and become a thing. Or you go to some party and you're the only Hispanic dude there, or there's only a couple, and then people start like it's a human nature. They just start somebody says something, somebody starts to pick on you or whatever, and you go with where you're comfortable. So you go with your kind of people, you don't have to worry about that. You can let your hair down and not have to worry about that somebody's dad's going to come in and tell you to get out, you're sitting there, or somebody loses $10 or whatever, and then they're accusing you of stealing it, and
yeah, that is interesting. That's something that I haven't really had to deal with, which is, I think, I mean, in a way, I mean, that's both good and bad, because like growing up, I felt basically safe regardless of where I went. I didn't really have to think about it, even though maybe some parents had that sentiment behind the scenes. It was never made just put point blank like that, where it was with you when you were growing up. But it kind of like, there was that veil over my eyes was like lifted once I became like an adult, where it's like, yeah, just because you didn't face any like hardcore racism doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just went away. And now having to like accept that and learn about all these things, whereas there's kids who literally were raised in that environment that still to this day are being raised in those types of environments, and they still exist. But here I was thinking, oh, it doesn't exist for me, or didn't exist for me, so therefore it doesn't exist at all. Something I've definitely have acclimated myself to over the years.
So like Quinn, so in Hawaii, for the Hawaiian people, there's that similar vibe for them.
Kind of, sort of. I mean, I know for most Hawaiians, speaking for my family, and they feel Hawaii is an occupied state. They view themselves as Hawaiians, Americans after that.
Yeah.
Which is, ironically, every man in my family is pretty much served in the military, so it's ironic. But, yeah, most Hawaiians view it as an occupied state. I know there is resentment. There's a bit of a tension there in the air between Hawaiians and other ethnic groups that immigrated over. More so, typically white folks. And maybe Japanese compared to others.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, typically it is. I mean, I don't personally have a lot of experience in Hawaii. I mean, I grew up in southern Kentucky, kind of in the diaspora. So
yeah.
But from what I've been told from stories from others, that's kind of how it is in Hawaii.
I see. With so when you growing up in Kentucky, did you face any sort of run-ins with that sort? Yeah, with
racism and stuff.
Yeah.
No, for the most part, for the most part, my time in Hawaii was pretty chill. I mean, I had one bad run-in with the cops, but in Tennessee, actually. But for the most part, mine was chill. I know, but that's really a product of the hard work of my grandfather, my grandmother, who were a biracial couple. My grandfather was 100% Native Hawaiian. He was very dark complected. If you didn't know his ethnicity, you would just assume he was a black man.
Oh wow.
He was very dark complected. And to be in the 50s and 60s in Southern Kentucky in a biracial relationship with my grandmother, who was Scottish, the trials that they endured, with upbringing my aunt and my father, the multitude of other aunts and fathers, those trials that they endured and that my father endured helped lead me have a more comfortable upbringing than what they did. So I can't specifically point to an instance or something where I was like, oh my God, the racism is so heavy right now.
Yeah.
But I know, I mean, it was there, in the subtext, but with the exception of one instance with a police officer, it was never really like in my face. And oftentimes, if it ever was, it was never in reference to me being Hawaiian. Typically, the assumption I would catch like a racial slur for another race. Had no idea it was directed towards me.
Like,
Eh,
I know you told me a story about a time you were at the airport. Could you tell that story real quick, if you're comfortable with that?
I don't remember that story, but I do remember one story when I was living in Nebraska. Um, I was a sales representative for Menards, and I was working with some contractor reps to order some roofing materials for them.
Mm-hmm.
And under another gentleman's breath, who was like, with their troop, I was called a slur for a Middle Eastern person, and it completely flew over my head. I had no idea that this guy was insulting me or that they were even talking to me until it dawned on me later.
You're like, wait, that motherfucker.
I was like, oh, he was talking to me?
Uh,
It's so hard to be like retroactively upset at
I know, yeah.
upset at something when it just completely whiffed over you. But yeah.
Yes. Well, it's kind of even at those times. I mean, you're looking in the South and a lot of the states, they were biracial marriage was against the law until 1967.
Yeah.
Which isn't a long time ago.
No. You were born in 61, Papa, right?
It was till I was like 7 years old, 6 years old. You can go to jail. I mean, your grandparents, if they would have thought your grandpa was black, he would have gone to jail.
He had several run-ins. Not only with like the police and individuals, but also with like Klan members and stuff like that. My father wasn't born till 1967, so
yeah,
I'm not sure, but
yeah, it's yeah, it's kind of hard to even think about that, like, wow, it's, and then you see what's going on, and it's like, well, that's not too long ago where things changed, and even in 1967, and where they're doing the integrating the schools, and you got the people, you got the people, mobs showing up, throwing rocks, and
at like 6-year-old kids,
teenagers,
like,
screaming the N-word, and just, I mean, they're out there, and where do those people go? I mean,
yeah,
those people, they're still around. I mean, maybe some of the older people are gone, but they're still around.
Yeah, those people had kids.
And, kid chucking rocks, a 6-year-old, he's about my age, and
yeah,
or did he double down on
yeah,
but they're still around, so it's kind of hard to believe that that things are going to change that quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I know I definitely felt I definitely didn't feel like racism in my face when I was there. But where I was living in Hopkinsville, it was a predominantly, well, it felt, certainly to me, it felt like it was a predominantly African American city. At least
really?
Specifically in the time I was coming up. So it always felt like, you almost saw more black folk than white folk, around the time when I was.
Yeah.
But within that city, there were still, there's a Jefferson Davis monument, 10 minutes away from where I went to high school.
Well, it might not be there anymore. But,
I know. I did things like 80 feet. It's like a miniature George Washington monument.
Oh, wow.
Like it's exact same. It's a tower. It's just smaller.
Oh, okay. So it's a spire.
Yeah, it's a spire. It's
okay.
just a
It's
smaller
not like
version.
Okay, it's not a statue of him. Okay, I got it.
No.
That is crazy to make a statue of a guy that wanted to overthrow your government.
Yeah.
And now we beat him, but we're gonna make a statue. That'd be like a statue of a Tojo, for Japan. We make them. We have so much respect for that guy. We're gonna make him, and Mussolini and Hitler will have.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
It's the ultimate participation trophy. Hey, you got second place. Let's give you a monument.
Burn down the South, but you know what we're gonna do for you? We're gonna give you a monument, and we're gonna name some army bases for you. How's that?
And it's crazy because it even extends locally in Sacramento. like I grew up going to like Sutter's Fort and stuff for field trips. And, we didn't really learn too much about who John Sutter, I think his name was, who he was and what he did. Just like, okay, like he was a founder of Sacramento. Cool. And like, you just move along. But now, like, they took down his statue and they're thinking about like closing Sutter's Fort because like of the atrocities he committed to like the Miwok people and like and Mexicans that lived here, and like how he basically ran like a gang where it's like it's like like the mafia. It was like you either join us and you work for us and
like a warlord.
Yeah, it's like work for us. And you'll get paid pennies, or you could say no and we'll hunt you down and kill you. So like you don't really have a choice. So and like I remember going in to Sutter's Fort and seeing I remember like the guide telling us this. They're like, yeah, the natives would sleep here. And there's no bed. It's just concrete, like it's a cell. And I remember going into that cell, and it's like smaller than my room. It was probably like 6 feet by 6 feet. And like, yeah, there would be about 4 natives sleeping here at a time. They had like some wool that they would put on the floor. Like this person was saying it so like nonchalant, like, oh yeah, this happened.
Some rocks.
Yeah, some rocks, as pillows. Like,
and here are the living quarters for our indigenous brothers and sisters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pile of rocks over there. Yeah, that's where John Sutter slept over here in the mansion.
Yeah, John Sutter had a house built for him, a 3-story house right over there outside the fort. But inside the fort, yeah, it's crazy. And so they took down his statue recently, which actually I think is kind of a good move.
But he was actually a representative of Mexico. He was.
Yeah, he was.
Was actually a representative of Mexico until he's seen that, and I think he's from
Switzerland,
Europe, Switzerland, or I don't know,
Switzerland.
And as soon as he found out the Americans were coming, he switched sides and he turned on them. But yeah, you always want to think this beautiful past where this they were out there and the Indians are helping them pick berries and and show them how to make acorn mash or whatever, and
yeah,
everything.
They're super romanticized.
Yeah, you
history.
don't see where he slaughters all these indigenous people because they won't do what he says.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's ridiculous. So it's crazy how it even extends over here, and people think, oh, California is this progressive, that how they call it, California. Some people call it Californias. Yeah, there's a lot of different types of people here, and there's a lot of history within the walls of this state. And
it's enormously diverse. I mean, just up the hill to my hometown, Angels Camp, it's remarkably conservative.
Yeah.
Like staunchly conservative.
Oh, definitely.
Like almost Free State of Jones conservative.
And all through the valley, where the only places where it's more liberal is near the coast. So you got in Los Angeles,
the Bay Area,
part of Los Angeles, the Bay Area, and that's it. I mean, but
even Sacramento is pretty
Sacramento
conservative.
Is more conservative. It's kind of liberal, but it's
turning that way.
The more you go inland, conservative. The more you go, like even in Southern California, if you go to Anaheim area, the Orange County,
yeah,
super conservative.
Like when you go into like inland, like Sonora area, and like over there, and even some parts of like the north, the true north, like closer to Redding and stuff.
Yeah, that's
beyond the wall.
Yeah,
yeah, but that's where everybody thinks everybody's here is a bunch of hippies, and
I know, yeah, no,
walk around tie-dye shirts and
yeah,
burning incense. No,
not true. Yeah,
I mean, even look at like 10, 15 minutes away in Wilton.
Yeah,
I mean, that's super conservative over there. They have a bar. There's a bar called the Wrangler, where you walk in a double-A seal of approved establishment. Until he's the one who told me that they put up a Trump Pence flag right when you walk in, so you see it right when you walk in.
Oh yeah.
He told me right when he saw that, he was like, "Yeah, I'm never gonna go back there." I ain't gonna do it. So,
That's
Well,
funny.
Wilton has its history too with
oh yeah,
that they had the Wilton. What is that? I don't know what it is. Like a courthouse, whatever. They said that's where their clan used to meet for Wilton.
really?
Yeah.
Mm.
It's like that. I don't know if you ever been there before.
No, I've never. I've been to Wilton, but I've never seen that place.
But you got to go further down. There's like a little courthouse, and then all the kids used to say they'd drive around there and say, "Oh, there's a meeting today," which I would believe it from back in the day, because these around here used to be pretty bad.
Yeah, it's crazy how here in Elk Grove, Bill Cartwright he went to Elk Grove High, and Bill Cartwright, NBA player, played for the Bulls during the first 3 championships of Michael Jordan's career, and just thinking about like seeing his mural on the wall at the gym at Elk Grove High, and just like thinking about, you see, okay, Bill Cartwright, whatever, but then you think about like how he went to school during that time, like when Elk Grove was literally just a little farm town, and like that whole Wilton type of mentality that you're talking about was just like everywhere here, and he was able to get out and he became like an NBA rotational player. Like he made some good money, and it's crazy.
That's what
that wasn't long ago too.
No. They said it was when we first moved in here. The one girl, I forgot, one of the realtors. She said, "Well, this is a cowboy town." It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, not so much anymore, but yeah.
Like it's changed, but I mean, everybody's been nice here ever since we've got here. Never really had,
Yeah, there's been no issues really, but
everybody's nice, but.
Yeah, it's definitely changed. I mean, you had a lot of people in the early 2000s move from the Bay Area over here, so it makes sense why the diversity would change an area, change the mentality and stuff.
Something I was just thinking of. How we were talking earlier about comparing the state of affairs today to the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Do you? In the 60s and 70s, it seemed like that went along with these times of crises, there was also like an age of heroes that like came out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Muhammad Ali, Bobby Kennedy, all these great people that, stood up for the right things, for strong, good moral principles.
MLK, yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel that we have heroes today that could rally the people to foster the sort of change that's necessary? Or do you think that we're in need of these sort of heroes?
Oh, I think you're definitely in need. There's nobody. It's just kind of a rudderless thing right now that everybody's just willing to stand up and, to face these things and to give people guidance. I think that's, you do need somebody like MLK or a Bobby Kennedy, a Muhammad Ali, a lot of Bob Dylan. So even musically, nobody's writing music about what's going on. At least I don't. I'm not in the loop, but I don't see anybody like that. The Beatles, John Lennon, and they're writing stuff. Protest songs. You don't see that movement happening. Where you've seen it in the 60s and 70s, and people were, trying to, affect change, positively, and through music, through, there's nobody right now doing that. You just see a lot of people, just out there doing whatever, and that one person. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know who that person is. If there is anybody that even comes close to that, I don't think so.
I think the answer to that as to why is just because I think people's tolerance for what and people's definition of what a hero is has changed. I think back then, Martin Luther King Jr. had his issues. He had his vices, and those vices, I mean, he was known to be, especially now, I mean, it's known now, but at the time it was kind of more hidden that he was like a womanizer, and
Bit of a ladies' man.
yeah, a bit of a ladies' man, to put it nicely. And
you ought to de-stress somehow,
well, I mean, I don't know. All I'm saying is nowadays people have very high expectations for others, and if you don't meet those expectations, then you're not going to. It's hard to have unanimous heroes when, in the age of the internet, there's different groups who have different expectations, and if you don't meet, it's hard to meet every group's expectations to be like a unified, unanimous. This guy's awesome. This girl's awesome. This person's great. It's there. You have your one side that's always going to say no, they're not great, of course, but like now there's so many different factions. There's so many different kind of communities online, and those individual communities have their heroes. But to have an overall cultural hero, it's pretty difficult. Like I don't think it's really possible anymore.
Well, especially now with how everybody's with all the social media. So like you figure if Martin Luther King was live right now and involved in all the what's going on, could you imagine all the right wing media exposing his extramarital affairs and so kind of dragging him through the mud, and he's a great guy and really has nothing to do with what his cause. He's he likes to do that, but look what good he's doing for the that's what he does on his own time is his own thing, right? He's not hurting anybody. He's are more than happy to be with them, and and yet that's why people would get dragged down, and that's probably why a lot of people aren't trying to go out and try to do that, because they don't want to take the chance. And well, you look at Muhammad Ali. He didn't want to go fight in the Vietnam War in the height of his career. He didn't. They banned him for 3 years. 3 years of boxing where he could have made a lot of money, and he decides not to.
In his physical prime too.
His prime, and he decides, no, I'm not gonna go. And then, it's crazy. I mean, how many athletes would do that right now?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody talks a big game, but how many guys would say, you know what, not doing it?
Yeah. That's what's interesting, though, is that athletes have a specific place in our culture, kind of like comedians do, or you can argue had. You can argue if they still have that place. I say they do, but that's another time. That's another conversation for another time. But athletes specifically, they're
a galvanizing force.
They're definitely a galvanizing force that can be looked to as kind of a role model, as an upstanding citizen, and they have to be that type of person for the most part now, because all eyes are on them and they're the most acclimated at a young age. Like, LeBron James was a freshman in high school, getting national attention. And so from that young of an age, he's had to get used to all eyes being on him, constantly making sure he doesn't mess up, even though he's had his issues, but nothing to the degree that basketball players were having issues that basketball players were having, like in the 80s, in the 70s especially. So it's I think if there's any heroes that can be looked to, it's athletes that really do a good job of going out of their way to doing community outreach and things like that. But things like that don't make front page news. But I would say LeBron James is like the closest thing we have.
You don't think Kyrie Irving can be that guy?
No, I don't think Kyrie Irving can be that guy. I'm sorry, but
it's a different time. Right now, there's so much money involved, and these guys are like, and they have their lifestyle to maintain. They're like, yeah, I'm down with the cause, but I'm not gonna lose out on the contract money.
That's always going to be some athletes, but I think that there are a lot of star athletes who, they would rather use their platform to further a certain type of change as opposed to just lining their pockets. Of course, there's going to be athletes that do that just want money. That's all they care about. But I think there's a larger portion of athletes that really do care, and I think it's impressive, and especially with NBA. I mean, there was like a call last week that a bunch of NBA players had on Zoom, and they some of them were saying how they don't think that the NBA should come back because that will take away momentum of these protests and stuff, because NBA players have been so vital in these protests, that to take those players out of that environment and put them into the Orlando bubble, it's going to take away the steam. But then there's other players who are saying no, like the national attention, the cameras on us, for like 2 months where there's really nothing else going on. That's positive. We could use that platform to inspire more change. So, I don't know.
It's difficult. I don't think you'd see an athlete sacrifice years out of his prime today, like you saw Muhammad Ali did.
Yeah.
All those years ago. But then again, I think it'd be difficult to convince someone to take that, to lay on that grenade, due to the moral absolutism that is demanded out of our idols these days.
Yeah.
So
it's true.
I don't know, man.
It's very true. Well, Papa, I think it's about that time. I want to thank you for coming on. But before we go, real quick,
okay.
What do you think is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders regular season record? Your prediction right now. What do you think?
They're going to do a solid 8-8.
Solid 8-8.
Yeah, 8-8. 7-9. They're going to be right there.
Nah.
They're going to just take you right to where you think you're going to go to the promised land, and then they're going to pull the rug right out from underneath you.
So you're saying 8-8?
Yeah.
Okay.
How many weeks before Marcus Mariota becomes the starter?
No, I don't think he's. Well, I think they're gonna throw him in there, and because maybe Carr's not gonna have a good game, or he's gonna get hurt, and Mariota's gonna go in there and throw like 5 picks. They're gonna pull him back out. And he's on the practice squad. Marcus Mariota. I mean, I thought he was gonna be. I don't know what. I thought he has all the tools, but for whatever reason, he just doesn't. Hasn't manifested itself. Well, we'll see. Maybe with the Raiders. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe he's the next Jim Plunkett.
That'd be awesome.
He's a Hawaiian. So you're pulling for him.
Yeah. Or either that,
awesome.
Either that, or he's going to be the next. What's the other guy we had? Tuiasosopo.
Tuiasosopo. Yeah. I thought he was gonna. I had high hopes for him.
Let's hope that he's the next, not Tuiasosopo.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
I also had big hopes for Tuiasosopo.
8-year-old Quinn there with his Tuiasosopo jersey.
Right next to my Junior Seau jersey. I was like, one day.
Oh, man. Well, thank you, Baba, for coming on such short notice. You'll definitely come back on again before the NFL season starts, so we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'll definitely bring all my NFL knowledge, all my years of sitting at the TV set, and bring it to you guys, so you can I can share it with you.
Oh yeah, we can't wait for it. But until then, we'll catch you next time, Pa. Love you. Thank you.
See you later. Have a good day.
You too.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that episode, or that interview with my dad, Ruben the Kitties Titties Alvarado. We are now primed and ready to give our recommendations for the week. So, Quinn, would you like to go first?
Sure. My first recommendation this week is a television show that I've fallen in love with. It is something that you can watch currently on Netflix, 3 seasons. I'm just looking up the name of the show creator so I can give them credit. The show is called Hap and Leonard. Currently on Netflix, 3 seasons, starring James Purfoy, Michael Kenneth Williams. The creators are Nick D'Amici and Jim Mickle. Why do I like this show?
Yeah, why?
It has a very retro feel. It's very reminiscent of 80s, late 70s kind of cinema to me. Basically, it centers around a friendship in eastern Texas, coming right out of the civil rights movement, right out of Vietnam. The best friendship between a white man and a black man. Buried treasure is involved.
Oh, ahoy!
An eccentric cast of characters is evolved. You can't speak too much about it without giving anything away, and you want nothing given away with this program. The dialogue is clean, it's sharp, it's immersive, and it's truthful and reflective of the region it takes place in, which is a giant pet peeve of mine when you watch a movie. For example, Tobey Maguire never had a Queen's accent in Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
That kind of shit drives me up a wall. So when you see, all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed.
Perfecto.
Hap and Leonard on Netflix, 3 seasons. You won't regret it if you like the sort of true crime melodrama.
Nice. It's like
The
Green Book.
No, it is nothing like The Green Book. That movie was atrocious. This movie is it's so far and away from The Green Book. Imagine if The Green Book was written by Brian De Palma or Quentin Tarantino.
Ooh.
Then you would have Hap and Leonard.
Nice.
So I highly recommend it. I think everyone would enjoy it. I enjoyed it immensely.
And you said it was a movie or TV show?
No, it's a TV show.
Okay.
3 seasons, 18 episodes.
Wow.
All available on Netflix.
Was it a Netflix creation, or was it first on another?
No, it was on the short-termed Sundance TV.
Oh, okay.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
when I first caught wind of it, there was a bunch of old shows like Rectify and The Red Road, that along with Hap and Leonard, that came out on Sundance TV back when like AMC was at its prime.
Yeah,
like Breaking Bad had just ended. Walking Dead was like, season 4, season
interesting.
5-ish. So yeah,
Nice.
18 episodes, 3 seasons. Hap and Leonard, highly recommend it.
Perfect. I will definitely check that out. Thank you for that one recommendation. We'll get back to you in a second, my boy. Now it's time for me to give my first recommendation. Let's see, where do I want to go with this? We'll do the video game first. So, there's this video game I've been playing recently called Elite Dangerous. If you haven't heard of it, it's on PS4, Xbox One. It's a PC game as well. You should play it on PC if you have one. I just don't, so I play it on my PS4. But Elite Dangerous is a game in which it's a giant like sandbox game, but you have a spaceship and you fly around amongst galaxies. You have the whole universe to explore. And it's like as close to, I believe there's like Earth is in there, and there's actual planets like that are real. It's not just like a fake universe.
I was hoping so much you would say Uranus.
Sorry to burst your bubble, but
I'm sorry, I'm a child, but anytime you could slip in a Uranus joke.
I mean, maybe I should have. That'd been funny. But yeah, so you fly around and you can upgrade your ship and like fit it for combat, or you can fit it for like transportation or any other jobs. And there's jobs that you can take and do for certain factions within the galaxy. And like there's cargo missions you can do. There's like seek and destroy missions there's all these different types of missions you can do. You can play the game violently, or you can play it peacefully, or anywhere in between on that spectrum. And it's just a really fun game to just pass the time with, and you really have to like study. Like, it's a game. There's a huge learning curve because you have to like study where there's certain way stations where you can refill on your fuel. Because if you run out of fuel and you're in the middle of the fucking space, you'll die. You don't want that to happen. So you have to like mentally like remember, okay, this planet has a station where I can refuel. This planet doesn't. So if I'm going from point A to point B, I have to really like maneuver my way through this galaxy, going planet to planet hopping to make sure I get to where I want to go. And of course it's the entire universe. So like it's endless almost. But there's also politics involved, which everyone loves politics, right? But there's like different factions that control portions of the galaxy. And so there's like this Empire faction that is kind of like the Empire of Star Wars, where they're just like very authoritarian and stuff. But then there's subsections of the Empire that are trying to pivot the Empire into a more populistic type of viewpoint of how to rule and stuff like that. And then there's other factions that are more about like that are more just straight like capitalists, where they're just like, we just want to make money, so we'll just harvest these resources, which is who I'm kind of aligned with. And the more missions you do, you align with these factions, so you become less wanted, or you're like, let's say if you do so many missions for that capitalist type of civilization, you're not going to be able to go into those planets that are more aligned with the Empire, because they're at war with each other. But you can help mend that fence if you want, or you can attack Empire forces. It's a very interesting game. It's very deep. Like I said, it's a huge learning curve, but once you get into it, it's addicting, because you just want to explore and you want to see more stuff. So
sounds pretty gnarly.
It's very gnarly.
1, I choose violence. And 2, I feel like the Empire gets a bad rap for being an authoritarian regime.
How?
I don't feel like we have enough substantial evidence to prove that they weren't optimal for the universe, for the galaxy.
Well,
all we have is the perspective of the rebels. The rebels.
Yeah.
The Confederate Jedi.
Well,
all we have is their side.
Well, in Elite Dangerous, they're not painted as necessarily like evil, the Empire. They just are the ruling force for a large portion of the galaxy. But within the Empire, there are subsections, like I said. So there's like this chick who basically is Bernie Sanders, but just like 30, and she's just like,
AOC.
Yeah, she's like, I wanna like help everybody out within our empire instead of trying to like crack the whip on them. And then you have another lady who's older who's like, no, we're gonna crack the whip on these people, and like she's basically a racist and stuff. You could help her out if you want. Or then there's this guy who's like trying to pivot the empire into a more capitalistic type of venture. And then there's another guy who's trying to basically turn it into communist China, and it's like, or Stalinist Russia, so it's like very, you could pick sub factions, and like those factions could rise up and take control of the empire, and you help them do that. And then there's a lot of just major factions too that I didn't even touch on. It's a very deep game. I highly recommend it if you want something to do, to really, really, really sink your teeth into, really immerse yourself in. That's a game. And it's also an MMORPG. So you're playing with other people. You can play it solo, but you can also play it with other people as well. It's really awesome.
I've never been a big fan of MMOs.
Yeah.
Not an MMO guy. The only game that I felt should have been an MMO, they never made into an MMO, and that was Pokemon. So,
I mean, Pokemon Go kind of. But anyways, I don't know.
Well, I mean, like, imagine an open Pokemon world.
Yeah.
Where you're walking down Elk Grove Boulevard, and then you see like I don't know, like Jose. He's like, "Hey, my guy, get your shit ready. I challenge you to a Pokemon duel, bitch."
That'd be the best.
Imagine.
Game. I wish
it'd be the best game of all time.
I wish Pokemon Go would have turned into that. Man,
you punta bitch, you fainted my Pikachu.
Where it becomes like gangs where there's like territories and stuff. I mean, that's kind of what Pokemon Go was for a time, but people just lost
That's
interest.
what Pokemon is, man. Pokemon it should be a ruthless place where gangs have inhabited and taken over the world and forced these animals to fight for their pleasure.
That's basically what's happening in Pokemon. But
yeah.
Anyways, what's your second recommendation, Quinn?
My second recommendation is a comic book, but currently the entire collection is available on Comixology, which is my preferred comic book app. It is Old Man Logan, written by Mark Millar, and I will tell you, I cannot remember who illustrated it currently, but give me 1 second. Steve McNiven. Old Man Logan. If you've seen the movie Logan, you have a general idea of what this movie or what this book is about. What you don't know is that it takes place in Sacramento, NorCal forever.
What?
James Howlett, Wolverine, after the inciting incident of the book, you find out has retired and moved to Sacramento.
Wow.
And he is an old man living in Sacramento underneath the control of the Hulk gang. Your favorite character, Hawkeye, Clint Barton, plays a giant role in the book. He's the main supporting character.
I love him.
He's also old. He's also blind. Fantastic book. Fantastic work. The art is amazing. The scope of the book itself is amazing. The new world it creates is amazing. It laid the foundation for what is probably generally received as the best Wolverine movie. I highly recommend checking it out. It's awesome. It's also very violent.
How long is it?
I don't know. Page-wise, I cannot tell. You give me 1 second.
I've always wanted to read that one because I love Hawkeye. And when you told me the synopsis of it like 2 years ago, I was like, bro, this is so cool. But I just never, I'm not the biggest comic book guy, as you know, as many of you know. But I definitely want to give it a chance. I love my Hawkeye.
So it's a complete book, so there's well over 100 pages.
Oh, okay.
So it contains every volume right now.
Nice.
So go to Comixology, do yourself a favor, get with the modern mythology, and read comic books. You're a better human being for it.
I agree.
What is your second recommendation?
The last recommendation for this week, my good friend Quinn, is none other than the new album by Phoebe Bridgers, Punisher. It came out on Friday, and I've listened to it already like 3 times through. She is a indie artist from Southern California, Los Angeles. She grew up there. And her first album was very much a folky type of country album with some indie elements thrown in. I loved that album. I still love that album. And Punisher is definitely a different vibe. She went more experimental with this album. There are some core just country tracks in there, which I love. I love sinking my teeth into those types of songs, especially from her, because her songwriting is really where she shines, in my opinion. But her song Kyoto is a very chill, fun pop tune, which I really enjoy. But then there's her song, let me see, because there's one song that she wrote. Oh, Punisher, the title track, is also a very, very good song. Very dark, really sad. All of her songs are very much in that vein of just like heavy sadness, but her voice is what kind of keeps you up, which is very interesting because she's saying and singing these really like kind of sad things, but the tone of her voice and stuff really is the thing that kind of keeps you from spiraling all the way down to that really dark abyss. The song Graceland 2 is that one country song I was talking about that's just amazing. Oh, it's so good. I believe Lucy Dacus, if that's how you pronounce her name. She's not featured on the song, but she does offer some backing vocals on the track too. Love it. And her song, the Garden Song, which was her first single off the album, really has grown on me. That song's a very indie type of song with a very driving melody in the background of her kind of like sing-songy melancholy vocals. And then of course the song Halloween is one that just kind of really stuck out to me as well. And then the last song on the album, I Know the End, is her most intricate song I think she's ever made. It's her or ever written. It's a song that starts out like most of her other songs and then just builds up to this really big orchestral arrangement and then ends with her just like screaming into the mic till she just can't anymore. And it's really experimental, like I said, but it's very, very, very engaging. So if you are looking for something new to listen to, you never heard Phoebe Bridgers before, definitely check out her new album Punisher, because I'm thoroughly impressed and she's one of my favorite artists today. She's a huge inspiration of mine. And like I said, it's within the words is where the beauty shines. Her play on words and her ability to craft these stories without saying a whole lot is amazing. So,
and how would you describe her voice in layman's terms?
In layman's terms, I would describe her voice as soft, yet man, it's difficult to say, yet weathered.
Like a Celtic hymn.
Yeah, a little bit. Where it's like she doesn't put too much bass into her voice. She keeps it very high.
Yeah.
But it's soft, but you can tell like when she's singing, it really feels like whatever she's singing about in that song, she's gone through that shit. Like she's gone through whatever she's singing about. Like it's from her heart. She sings from her heart in every song. And that's what matters the most. I feel like that's what really connects people together, is to an artist at least, is that specific detail. So if you're looking for that authenticity, that's where you're going to get with Phoebe Bridgers. And not just her Punisher album, but also I believe it's like Stranger in the Alps, I believe. That's what Stranger in the Alps is her first album. You'll also find it there too. It's just genuine indie pop experimental. Her new album's experimental, but basically she's a pop artist. It's just that type of music, and it's really good. It's really fucking good. So I urge you to listen to her if you are interested. But yeah, those are our recommendations for the week. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Closers Podcast, the first episode of Season 2. I'll be on Friday to close out your week in style, which I will be doing from here on out. And Quinn will be back at you at the beginning of next week on Monday the 29th, in which he will talk about something on Hang 10 with Quinn Kalan.
Breakfast in bed. Bitches.
But yeah, well, thank you guys for tuning in. Quinn, would you like to say anything before we go?
Not particularly. Just stay safe, stay smart, stay cool, and God bless.
Perfect. Please follow us on Instagram at The Closers Podcast, on Facebook at Closers Podcast, and subscribe to your YouTube channel. And also, if you're not already, follow us on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Pods or anywhere else where you can get your podcasts, so you can follow along with us through this journey of a 3-episode-a-week Season 2. We are excited, folks. Hope you are as well. Hope you enjoyed everything that we're throwing at you. Much love. We'll see you soon. Take care.